What do you think? What is reality?
That's a good question. So, I have a short answer and a long answer. Which one do you want first?
Let's just talk about it. We can discuss as long as you want to.
Okay. So the long answer for me is that I remember over the years, I had this perception about reality that it stems from the idea of the fourth dimension. So I guess I early on had this craze of searching what the fourth dimension is, what reality is through scientific principles and scientific terms.
Yeah.
And the one hypothesis I would say I had was that the way we see waves, how they propagate,
Yeah.
if any particle, I mean, they propagate in the form of waves,
Yeah.
right? And the speed of light is the fastest moving particle, and it moves in the form of waves. So I thought to myself, exactly why is it that these particles, when moving, move in waves, and not just the speed of, not just light particles, not just photons, electrons, electron guns, and all these things, they move in waves and not in a straight particular path. So I had this thought that the way a two-dimensional object or a two-dimensional fabric is formed is that it is the fabrics are intertwined. So by that I mean this cloth, for example, they are knit together in a way that if you really look close enough, you see waves like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And this is a two-dimensional plane.
Yeah.
So I remember recently there was this discovery of the LIGO project that they had, which proved the fact of gravitational waves.
Yeah.
And what I thought of then was that if reality is formed in a three-dimensional plane.
Are you referring to the same experiment in which Pakistani scientist and the some Walwala?
Yeah, I'm forgetting her name. Nargis, yeah.
Nawalwala, something like that. She
Yeah.
was part of that, and in which like two black holes had collided billions of years ago, and their gravitational waves reached to
Yeah.
us, and there was a machine in place through which it was proven that Einstein's theory of
I'm not sure which
which theory,
was,
but it just
gravitational
proved
waves. Yeah.
that gravitational waves do
Existed.
exist, and we are living on a space-time fabric.
On a
right?
fabric, exactly. And of the findings that they had,
So the reality can be stretched, it can be bent.
absolutely. So that is what fascinated me the most.
Yeah,
Of considering our reality as this malleable plane,
yeah,
that through this high energy blast or this interaction of the two black holes, it created so much stress so much so that the waves that it formed propagated for light years, and essentially when it passed through
it
our
passed
Earth,
through us. We also
we stretched on one end and shrunk on the other.
Yeah,
And that was what those laser beams
yeah,
proved.
calculated somehow.
That's what they calculated. So that's
Yeah,
so coming to the point of why I thought that waves, particles moved in the form of waves. So it was probably because the three-dimensional fabric that we have is woven in such a manner
yeah,
that particles are moving in the form of waves. Now, coming to reality.
yeah. What is reality?
What is reality? I think it's also correlated with truth, because the truth for each and every one of us, we believe that either there can be an absolute truth or a subjective truth. Either truth is something that is just there and we're looking for it, we're seeking truth, or we're just forming the truth for ourselves along the way.
Yeah,
There is the positivism approach, because I'm recently learning in my college this course that we have that teaches research tools, and in it we learn. I'm not too good with this with our courses in particular, but one of the theories include the positivism approach, and the other is critical analysis, I guess. And the difference that they have essentially is that one believes that the truth exists and we're out seeking for the truth. That is one form of research. The other is that, I may be quoting this loosely, but the truth is something that we form through our subjective realities,
yeah,
right? and whoever dominates, let's say, whichever individual dominates in a social culture, their reality is imposed on others.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, if they have
So
a
which is
particular
why,
way of
like,
looking
when we
looking
read
at the world.
history, so it's said that history is written by the victors. Right?
Yeah.
So because that's the reality for them, and they imposed that reality back then,
Yeah,
and they wrote the way they perceived the events.
exactly. Now, I'm not sure exactly if that's the case or not, but it is definitely an argument that can be made, and reality.
And also, like in terms of, like when we speak about reality, so reality is different for different species as well. So like
Yeah.
we see things differently. When we say something is red, or something is green, something is yellow,
Yeah,
essentially not all species see those colors the same way,
they don't.
right?
We can't
And
even say the same for humans. The colors you see might be different for me.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's just because like we have named those colors, and we have told ourselves that this is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we perceive those things the same way. And like seeing the world, like I guess it was snakes, or I'm not sure which species that sees infrared light as well,
Yeah,
right? So they have got those heat sensors as well. So for them, reality is like entirely a different thing. So probably like for the creatures living deep down in the sea, where the light cannot approach, for them reality is something else, right? So what do you think
it
about
makes
that?
sense. Okay, I would want to discuss this in three different domains. One would be the religious aspect, the other would be the social aspect, and the third would probably be the
Scientific.
scientific aspect.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, coming to the religious aspect of it, we're Muslims. So, we believe that reality is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon us, and we, as His creation, is to admire all that He's made and to essentially be grateful for what we have, for the life that He's given us, and to then worship Him and essentially go back to Him. That is one way of looking at it. If loosely, I'm not sure if I'm overgeneralizing this, but that's one way I would go about this question.
Yeah. So being
Religiously.
Muslims, like we have a like simple answer, and the answer is that we are ashraful makhlukat, we the superior
Yeah.
creatures made by the God.
Yeah,
And we have the entire history of how the world was made, actually the universe came into existence,
kun fayakun.
how humans came to earth,
Yeah.
and so we have all that information available religiously.
Yeah. So
So
that
there's
is-
like that one way of looking at it, and we get all the answers if we follow the religious beliefs.
religious beliefs, exactly. But for Islam, the way I would go about it is not just one religion. So as Muslims, we are to have faith in the belief that Islam is that one basic reality which is integrated with science, with every living being, with being itself. It is associated with that, and now acknowledging the fact that categorizing it as a religion would be then considered erroneous, because it is not a category. Islam is not a category. It is, for us as Muslims, a reality. Everything else that associated in terms of its variations or the different forms of religions that exist, that for us is a form of it's a separate extension of what already exists, is how I would try to explain this. But that is the religious aspect of going about this
Yeah.
question of reality. Coming to the social aspect of it, we are in very interesting times, especially in Pakistan. This question that you ask can definitely be related, can be felt with the millions of Pakistanis, because what is exactly going on? That is the question. Our Prime Minister, he stepped down. He didn't step down, he's been removed. And we hear different arguments. We hear that on the one end, it might be a conspiracy of higher forces, or on the other end, it's just how the constitution is to be upheld.
So
There
the
are different-
masses have been divided into two groups. One of them believes that for them reality is that, Imran Khan was probably not doing well,
Yeah.
and then this vote of no confidence came into being, and then he was legally or constitutionally thrown out of office. Whereas there is this second reality for people who see this conspiracy, who believe in all that the narrative that Imran Khan has pushed in,
Yeah.
and they find or they see logics behind all that is being said. So I think it also depends. Whatever your beliefs are, the reality as such becomes like that for you. Your mind actually finds reasons or logics behind making proving that belief that you already have faith in.
So you're talking about the fear of change, right?
Not
Because
not
you
so
have
much,
the
but
presuppositions.
I just feel that whatever you believe in already, your mind finds reasons to solidify that belief system.
And the reason it does that, because anything that would deviate
Well, there
from
could
your
be
reality
like multiple
puts your
reasons.
own reality in question, and that's alarming.
Yeah,
People don't want that.
yeah.
They wouldn't want that.
And there could be like multiple reasons why they have that reality made, because there can be some hidden benefits they get out of it. So sometimes it can be a problem of identity. So for example,
Yeah.
if somebody has spent his entire life supporting one party, and it has become his or hers part of their identity, they would not step down from that belief system, not consciously but unconsciously as well. So no matter what proof you give to them, they're not going to believe, they're not going to change their reality, because there are inherent biases as well. So it's just not one factor that comes to play, but there can be actually multiple factors.
Absolutely, but it's not always the case that they won't have the opportunity for for introspection, because their beliefs might be rigid, and they themselves might be rigid in this regard. But it depends on their personality as well. If of the big five they are high in openness, they
Yeah.
might consider new ideas,
Yeah.
and they might then weigh their own beliefs and juxtapose that with any incoming new idea that they see.
Yeah.
And that is good, because then you get to have a benchmark with which you correlate your existing beliefs. Whether that's a good thing or not, that's a question of perspective again. Because I remember Peterson going about this in a way that the way we form our personality is it's not something that is strictly fixed. In fact, with every given experience that we have, we discard a part of ourselves, but we do so by integrating another aspect that we unlocked out of ourselves. Not something that was given to us, but something that we unlocked through that experience. And
Yeah.
experiences unlocks those biological potentialities, is how he puts it.
Yeah.
So that's something that's cool for me. That's fascinating. So that is how I see that. Okay, reality is coming to the question of reality. That it is really reliant on the perceptions that people have and their presuppositions.
Yeah.
Reality for them is what they believe.
Yeah.
That is reality.
Yeah.
That's the social aspect of it. Now coming to the scientific aspect. Scientific approach believes in reality being absolute, that
Yeah.
there is one reality for all.
Yeah, but it would all start with the consciousness. If there isn't any consciousness, there wouldn't be any realization of any reality at all.
Yeah.
So when we say reality, so there has to be this consciousness that experiences that reality, right? And when we talk about, conscious beings,
Yeah.
so it's just not human beings. It can be actually multiple species that has consciousness, right? And again, for them, the reality they form is on the basis of experiences that they have,
Yeah.
right? And the way they feel the world around them. And yeah, like you mentioned, that scientifically, if there is one thing that all the species feel a certain thing in a certain way, uh, so that universal truth somehow becomes a reality. So if I
Yeah.
see that the fire is, that something which is warm, which is hot,
Yeah.
and you feel it the same way, so for that, it's a reality for us that the fire is something that burns, that is warmer, and ice, on the other hand, is something colder. So that's something that we mutually, everybody experiences, and universally we agree to those facts, which is what we call reality.
I think our reflexes play a role here as well, because when we touch something warm, we don't consciously tell ourselves that it's warm. We have reflexes, so we just move our hand away. So that, I'm not sure how exactly that correlates with reality, but it is in our biology that we have that reflex to
Yeah.
protect ourselves.
So like reflex action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something that
But at the
exists.
same time,
but
if
does
like-
that exist outside the domain of consciousness?
So if we
That's the question, right?
No, I mean, it would still be part of your subconscious brain, because like your subconscious brain would take those decisions that your conscious brain doesn't. But at the same time, like if we just break down what consciousness is, so I think, like, again, it's also like your state of mind in which you are, because when you are in a certain state of mind, you would feel, or you would experience things accordingly. So for example, when people who have experienced alt reality through psychedelics,
Yeah, the astral plane or the astral.
not exactly, but like psychedelics. So for example, people who have experienced taking mushrooms, who have experienced taking LSD or DMT, so they experience reality in a very different way. It's as if the frequency of their brain has changed, and they see, they feel, they smell, all your senses
They're heightened.
that are not exactly heightened, because like there are different
Altered.
drugs that make you experience things differently. But the psychedelics,
Ecstasy, I guess, heightens your senses.
probably, I'm not sure, I haven't experienced it, but
But
mushrooms I have taken, right? So with mushrooms, you actually
are you admitting that on camera over
well,
here?
that's fine.
Guys, I don't think that's right. You
It's
should
fine.
just cut this part because.
So I've like taken like small dosage of mushrooms just to experience it.
And
So, but
there should be disclaimer. This is just for the sake of
it's fine.
fictional
Like
argument.
Joe
This is
Rogan
not
talks
true.
about it all the time. We can talk about
That's
it.
America. We're in Pakistan. Acknowledge that fact.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just exaggerating. No, fuck that shit.
There's no
man.
proof here. This is not a confession. You don't see it lying around.
It's
So
fine. Let it be out, man.
Yeah.
It's fine. I've experienced it, right? So when you take even a small dosage of psychedelics,
Right.
your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your taste, your all these reflexes that makes you experience reality, that changes, right? And so people who have actually experienced it, I mean, I've just taken microdosing and haven't experienced it to that level where you completely lose your consciousness, but people who have taken higher dosage, when they return to their consciousness, they cannot tell the difference between reality from where they were or where they are now. So they're not sure if that was something real or if this is where they came back is real. So, and there has been like experiences where people actually lived an alternate life for 3 4 months in that reality. They had kids, they had families, and then they woke up, right? So for them, that was more real to what we are living in right now. So again, probably the reality we are living in is also dependent on this, this frequency of our brain that we are tuned to. So like, even for example, people who have any sort of like mental disorders, for them reality becomes something else, right? So it also like depends on your state of mind, probably.
That's valid, and I think that comes back to the argument in the form of the social aspect of it. But considering the fact that there are around 7 or so billion people in the world, that means there are 7 billion realities for them, and to deal with each reality separately is not feasible. So coming to the third aspect of it, the scientific approach, the way reality is pragmatically dealt with is through scientific principles. And an example of that is the hydrogen bomb, that there was something real that actually brought that destructive weapon into existence, and just through manipulation of reality. So how our electronics work, how our these nuclear weaponry work, is through manipulation of reality, of breaking the atom, the most basic form of reality, of what reality is made up of. The building blocks of our reality are these elements, which is included in all of us, each and every one of us. This table over here, the camera, our clothes, even our flesh and bones, through a finite, not finite, but a finite number or category of particles, which is within the periodic table. Those particles collectively make up most, if not all, most of our reality. And the manipulation of that reality proves that exists, because it is through that manipulation we're able to see LCD screens, we're able to have hydrogen bombs, right? And yet, while we're moving towards quantum computers, right? Quantum world itself is it's a separate world out of the physical world that we see. The laws there are different, but it exists. Yet we do not, understanding that all these things exist and that we're able to manipulate them, we still do not really understand them. We do not really understand the making of an atom, the making of the different particles and subparticles that we have. We don't understand them, or why they interact the way they do. We just know that they do that.
Yeah.
And we're able to predict that to a certain degree, or enough for us to be able to put them to use.
Yeah.
Right? And this is
So like,
fascinating.
you gave me that once you told me about
human
that,
ingenuity.
when we were talking about quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
And you told me about the electrons, that they sort of like, two electrons would probably interact with each other in a very weird way, even if they're like far apart.
Schrodinger's cat.
What?
So one example that comes from the quantum world is Schrodinger's cat. That so you put a cat. This is a thought experiment. You put a cat inside a box with explosives, and then you have a detonator, and the box, it's concealed. Once you detonate the box, you have there are two possibilities. Either the cat is alive or it's dead. But before you even look for what the result is, in that given moment, the cat is both alive and dead. It is only when you remove the box, you see one result. and that is how quantum mechanics work, quantum computing. So what they're hoping for is, if there is it works on binary terms, so there are ones and zeros. So if you send a signal, and the receiver, for the receiver, it can either be a 1 or a 0. Now if I receive a 0, that means the signal you sent was a 1. But if I receive the 1, it means the signal you sent was a 0, and you cannot know that until and unless I receive my message. So it is simultaneously both. The realities are split into two, and it can be split into 3, 4. I'm not sure if 3 or 4, but loosely that is somewhat how quantum computing works. And this stems from the fact that for an electron, you can either know its position or its speed. I suppose that was the other aspect, but yeah, you cannot know both, because once you calculate its speed, it's moved somewhere else, and once you know where its position is, you can know its speed. I'm not sure if its speed is the other part of this, but that's something that I remember from my high school physics. That is something how complex these systems are. Yet scientists, they were working like mad onto these how would I call this, realities, because it is a reality. And they're hoping to revolutionize computing. And the next revolution that we may see in our technological devices is not the metaverse, but is actually quantum computing, because that would drastically undermine supercomputers. It would make computers more efficient, more faster, and it would exponentially scale up the use or the reach our existing computers have.
And also, like, talking about reality, so the way we see things or we feel, we believe in the way physics work. Right. And quantum physics actually, at a micro level, the reality is also different, because like if we take example of quantum physics, so things might not work the same way as things work in our reality.
What's more mind-bending, that in the quantum world, if you really like shrink down, you may find yourself in a wormhole, because wormholes are these like micro inconsistencies in our reality. So our reality in a higher definition seems legit. It seems somewhat fathomable. But when you really dig deep, there is an exact calculation as to how small you would have to go for yourself to find a wormhole. And wormholes are the way I see scientists.
Are they like portals?
Yeah, the way scientists describe them are as not just portals, but inconsistencies in our reality. So the reason this is fascinating is because if you look at any two-dimensional object, let's suppose this cloth, and you really dig deep, there are holes inside of this, and this is what it essentially is trying to prove, that the three-dimensional fabric that we have itself has those micro
tiny holes,
tiny inconsistencies, and those inconsistencies lets you leap into different points of time, so you can travel time.
So just
that is what wormholes are for.
I think it was the Endgame, Avengers Endgame, and in that they show all those Avengers team members going into that quantum world and becoming extremely smaller. And then traveling.
So that the portal wasn't big. It was a wormhole, but they shrunk themselves.
They shrunk themselves, and
where they could travel time.
They travel time through that.
So Hollywood, I would say, did
but
did good in
definitely.
that
I mean, there can't be any living being except that I forgot that the smallest living being that looks like a hippopotamus.
Not a hippopotamus,
what
I
is
would
it?
say looks like a bear. The tardigrade. Tardigrade.
Tardigrade. Tardigrade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tardigrade.
I'm not sure if they're like small enough to fit into
They're not.
the
But they're really small.
although they're like really small, the
Yeah.
smallest beings, right?
Tardigrade.
You know what's fascinating is that tardigrade are even they exist in the deepest layers of the earth.
Yeah.
So even if like we are hit by asteroids and we are like by all means destroyed, there would still be life on earth.
They're indestructible. So what I read about them was that they can live 10 years in
Without
space,
food.
without oxygen, without food,
Oxygen. Yeah, for 10 years.
for 10 years, and they're prehistoric. So they've existed for centuries,
Yeah.
for thousands of centuries, millions. And that's because they've been indestructible. And how, one more thing that where I read was, I guess this was on Flipboard or somewhere, about tardigrades, that scientists, they're trying to find the key to their, all to their,
Sturdiness.
no, immortality, but not
Immortality.
exactly immortality, because
Are they
they're
like
mortals.
immortals or like
They're
is it
not.
that- so or we don't have any proof of like their lives.
No, they have a lifespan, but
Right.
they're indestructible. That's the
Right.
thing. So they're trying to find to ways to utilize their capabilities of immortality, of
Surviving,
survival, and to
right.
apply that into human beings.
Right.
I don't really get why, because this is one article that showed scientists using this way to prolong the
The
human
lifespan of human beings, probably we
Yeah.
don't want to die. We are afraid of dying. Because we're
trying,
like, if we
trying to
die
achieve
and if there's
immortality.
nothing on the other side, then what's the purpose?
No, but I think the finitude of life provides its meaning, because
But
then you know that you
probably,
have.
I think not if this option is available, because like I think again it depends, how
the
we
person.
perceive things, and
Yeah.
it comes back to this question of reality ultimately. But I think it all depends, if this option is probably available
Yeah.
at some point in time where we can have this immortal lives, probably you and I would opt for that too. Who would want to die? I mean, even
The memories
only
would
if,
haunt us,
well, we wouldn't
because we're sentient creatures.
probably, but we can't tell until unless we experience it. And I mean,
I mean, just look at Logan.
we can't say
Was he happy? In fact, he was happy that he died.
Logan,
Logan,
the
Wolverine,
character? Wolverine.
Wolverine.
Well, yeah, but he was immortal, right?
He was.
He was, but he died in the end.
He died in the end.
He died in
Sorry for the spoilers for
Oh,
those
that's
who haven't
fine,
watched.
that's
If you
fine.
haven't, then you're just outdated. It's been like around for a while.
Yeah. Right. So
Let's come to pop culture. Like, let's.
we can have a separate
Work this
podcast
through.
for that, but let's
Yeah,
just
sure.
like talk about reality today. So the wormholes, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Wormholes.
Wormholes, and
We're trying
this
to
is
connect
how-
that with
yeah.
reality.
So tardigrades, right?
Tardigrades.
They can't. They're not as small.
They're not.
To like get into
Yeah.
wormholes, right? Well,
Wormholes.
that makes me wonder how much smaller you would have to become to travel time.
There is a specific number
Right.
that represents that length. I'm not sure what that is, but I read that and it's been calculated. Do you know about string theory? That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
string theory. So
Yeah.
like string theory is essentially something that they tried to explain in the Interstellar as well, right?
The theory of everything. One equation that represents reality.
Right. And also that reminds me that when we are in the space, the reality works differently. So for example, when
I think it's about wormholes, black holes.
no, I mean
and their
not
gravitational pull.
not just that, but for example, if we are on Mars, let's say, the reality would be a little different to us because our body weights would be different, the physics there would be working differently.
Time is different there.
The time would be
Yeah.
different, and if we just like take that example of theory of relativity, so like spending one day at one different planet could be years of time on our Earth.
Yeah, and that
Right.
is due to the gravitational pull, I guess, that they have, which is why black holes have the highest effect for this, because they have the strongest gravitational pull.
Yeah.
And then that is also because they warp reality the most.
Right.
Black
So
holes.
black holes are essentially their
Dead
mass,
stars.
dead stars, and their mass as well.
Masses.
And they have
Massive.
such great gravity that even light cannot escape their.
Exactly, and they have an immense amount of stress on the fabric of reality, which is why that stress it distorts, warps not only space but time,
Right.
right? And by the way, our reality, our fabric, it's what's the word? Intertwined with time.
Right.
So